This presentation is called Carpentries as OERs to provide data science training for students. Our first presenter's name is Heather Shimon, who is a science and engineering librarian at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, where she provides research services and instruction in the areas of agricultural and life sciences, as well as environmental studies. Additionally, she is a certified Carpentries instructor and research data services consultant. A commitment to equity, diversity, and inclusion informs all of her work. Lisa Abler is a science and engineering librarian at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Her goal is to help students at all levels better organize, document, and store their data. She actively pursues this goal through library instruction and research services, acting as a research data services consultant, and engagement with the Carpentries community. Sarah Stevens is the director of the Data Science Hub at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. She became passionate about helping researchers learn to apply data science tools while pursuing her PhD in microbiology. She is an active community member in the Carpentries as an instructor, trainer, maintainer, lesson developer, member of the board of directors, and local community organizer. So thank you very much. Please take it away.
Hello, thank you, Charlene. Welcome to our presentation. With increased data production and sharing within and among campus research environments, we're fielding increasing requests for tools and training in the libraries to efficiently and effectively work with data. Today, we'll be talking to you about using the Carpentries open source lessons in conjunction with open source programming languages as a means to be able to offer basic computer programming skills training in your library. First, we'll begin with introductions. I'm Lisa Abler, and I'm a science and engineering librarian with the University of Wisconsin-Madison Libraries. Heather? Heather's audio might not be working. Heather's also a science and engineering librarian in the UW-Madison Libraries. Sarah?
Hi, Sarah Stevens, pronouns she, her, hers, and I'm the director of the Data Science Hub here at UW-Madison.
Great. Slide. Today, we'll be talking about why training in computer programming skills is increasingly in demand in research environments. We'll introduce you to the Carpentries as a resource to teach these skills and briefly orient you to Carpentries' open lesson structure and offerings. We'll demonstrate that by offering Carpentries workshops through the libraries, we provide services that our users want and that align with libraries' goals of addressing information needs. We'll also provide insight into what workshops look like at the UW-Madison Libraries. We'll offer resources for getting involved with the Carpentries and introducing them to your library. And then we'll take questions. Now I'll turn it over to Sarah.
Hi, so as was mentioned in my introduction, I'm a microbiologist by training. And when I came to grad school, there were about 20 people in my incoming class of graduate students, and 2 of us had had any experience with doing data analysis with programming languages. And in the time I was there, I think actually only 2 people graduated and left without learning a coding skill, without learning programming. And so I really felt like this was so core, and yet most of us were not learning it in undergrad in our education. And so how were people learning this? They were getting help from each other, and then there were workshops like the Carpentries. And so I found myself, having been one of the people who came with a little bit of computational experience, helping a lot of my peers do these skills. And I was really excited when I found the Carpentries community because I didn't have to create these lessons on my own. I had these resources that I could reuse to allow me to teach my peers how to use these tools in their own research. Next slide, please, Heather. And so the Carpentries is a global community of instructors, of researchers, librarians, information specialists who put together these open educational resources called software, library, and data carpentry. Those are the 3 main lesson programs that the Carpentries has. And they have other lessons that I'll talk a little bit about as well. And so these are all computational or data analysis workshops that give researchers the skills they need to tackle data and computing challenges. So our goal is really to help researchers learn these skills outside of their traditional training. Next slide, please, Heather. And so the teaching philosophy of the Carpentries is that we teach these foundational data science skills such as data organization, cleaning your data, how to analyze and visualize your data. And we found them on best computational practices like using modular code, finding the right data structure, making sure your work is reproducible, reusable by other people, and then using open science and open scholarship as part of the computational best practices as well. And so these are all for a research audience, primarily library science or library data carpentry. Sorry, library carpentry is actually intended for librarians and information specialists to help them learn the computational skills so they can help researchers, but also so they can use them in their own practices. And so these are toolbox of everyday skills that you need to use with coding. It's not full software engineering practices. They're the skills that the carpentry, the pieces that you can do in your own research to do data analysis. And we use hands-on teaching methods like live coding, so the instructor is typing in the tool that the researchers will actually use when they leave, and the researchers are learning along with the instructor, following along, typing those same things in a community of helpers and other learners that can help if any issue comes up. And we try and base all of our training on research-based pedagogy as well. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so what are we teaching? So we teach a lot of different open source tools. So we teach things like R and Python and a bunch of other different open source tools that are data science tools around cleaning and management, analysis and visualization, version control and containerization, so managing your software and your environment. We're branching into machine learning and doing things like text analysis and more. And then those are the technical workshops the Carpentries teaches. There's also instructor training, so teaching how to teach how we teach, and collaborative lesson development training, which teaches how to make lessons in this open source system that for people who want to make new lessons as well. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so the lessons, how are the lessons created in the Carpentries community? They're actually lesson websites that anyone can visit and use. They're made using GitHub, which is a common open source software workflow or tool that people use in a particular workflow to make open source software like R and Python and the various packages people use that they share with others in those tools as well. And so the Carpentries is not only the global community of instructors, but also a small nonprofit that helps support that community of instructors. And they maintain the infrastructure, that website infrastructure that you can see on the right-hand side of the slide here. And so this infrastructure is useful for a lot of reasons. It has ability to kind of embed code in it. So you can see the code listed on the right-hand side here. The output of the code is also shown there. And then there's things like exercises. So the little lightning bolt with the yellow edge around it is actually a challenge exercise in the lesson webpage. And it has an expandable solution box, so someone can expand the solution. And so we're going to put in chat now, actually, the link to some of the Carpentries lessons for you to be able to explore on your own. So please take a look, explore some of the features. In the upper right-hand corner of the lessons, you'll notice there's actually an instructor and a learner view that you can switch between. There's lots of all nice, unique features that they've built into the infrastructure that make it really useful for creating these open educational lessons for people to use. And so please take a look at those and type any questions you have about it in chat, and I'll make sure I get a chance to answer those when Lisa's presenting. Okay, so I mentioned there's this lesson infrastructure. We're using this open source software workflow. Anyone can contribute this. You do have to know how to use GitHub to contribute to a lesson or create lessons like this, but we also teach how to do that. So we kind of support the infrastructure and using the infrastructure as well. And then there's volunteers who maintain the contribution. So if I notice that there's a typo in a lesson I went to teach, I can go in and make a suggestion to fix that typo. And then the people who maintain it will be like, oh, this typo needs to be fixed. Or if it's a bigger issue, they'll talk about fixing that issue, whatever the case may be. And they'll make sure that that change gets implemented into the lesson itself. And again, any of these lessons can be used by any instructors. They're all licensed with CC BY or CC0, so that you can, as long as you're attributing the original authors and the Carpentries, or no attributions required for some of the CC0 lessons. You can use them to teach, you can use pieces of them, mix and match them, or people use them for self-study to work through them. I often will suggest learners, that people who come to me in my consultations, I'm like, oh, you need this workshop, but we don't offer it for another like 6 months or so. You can work through it on your own and come to our regular office hours and ask us questions about it. So anyone can use these for self-study as well. Okay, next slide. All right, so I want to add a little bit about some of the new lessons in the Carpentries as well. And so I mentioned the official lesson programs, which are software, data, and library carpentry. But there's also the Carpentries incubator and lab. And those are the places where community contributed lessons can be put. So anytime you come up with a new lesson in the Carpentries community and you want other people to be able to contribute to it, to find it, to be able to use it in their own work, you can put it in the incubator. I have like 4 lessons in the incubator, and when my first lesson was in there, I was shocked because I'd randomly run into people who had taught my lesson, and I was like, "Oh, that's great! I didn't even know you taught it. What feedback do you have?" And so it was really exciting to kind of be able to get that information from other people teaching my lesson as well. So anyone can teach those lessons. Anyone can contribute. There's also a process of open peer review, which you can take your lesson from the incubator to the lab through this peer review process. There's also an opportunity for them to apply to be a part of the official curricula if that's of interest later. And there's, along with the peer review, there's a partnership with the Journal of Open Source Education, Jose, to publish papers about the reviewed lessons. So that's kind of exists there. So I've talked a little bit about the Carpentries infrastructure and how these lessons can be used and how they're kind of maintained. I'm going to hand off to Lisa to talk more about how the libraries specifically are using them here at UW-Madison.
Thank you, Sarah, for that overview. So Sarah explained how, as a researcher, she utilized her computational skills to simplify, enable, and further her research. And for many of those same reasons, researchers across disciplines and across campus are often prompted to seek training in computer programming. But you may be wondering why you'd want to offer these through your library or how you'd even make that happen. I'll start by saying that we think the Carpentries are a great fit within libraries and a timely and valuable service that libraries can offer. For one thing, this information is in demand. Increased data sharing and publishing results in libraries fielding requests about how and where to share research outputs, as well as how to find and access other researchers' data. Of course, if you're collecting or accessing data, you need tools and skills to work with it, and our users are asking for the training in those skills as well. Coding is a powerful tool to efficiently and effectively work with your own and other people's data sets. It's also an excellent tool for documenting decisions made regarding data analyses and visualizations as you're doing your research. And in addition, coding enables automation of data analysis and visualization. So that can be a huge time saver. These benefits, things like organization and documentation, are key aspects of research data management. We certainly want in the libraries organized documented data, and so do researchers. By teaching computational skills, libraries can help researchers utilize these tools to build data management right into their workflows. And if that's not enough, documentation and automation contribute to reproducibility, a principle that underpins reliable, trustworthy research. So given the clear utility and benefits of computational skills to researchers, we might expect to see increasing opportunities for learning these skills incorporated into curricula, but unfortunately that hasn't really been our experience to date. Outside of a few disciplines such as computer science, coding isn't being widely taught in courses at UW-Madison. Neither is reproducibility nor the tools to achieve it. Libraries can address these gaps by offering training students can't get elsewhere on campus. And by offering programming workshops, libraries position themselves as active partners in conversations and initiatives around data that are already taking place across campus. Next slide. Another part of what makes the Carpentries such a great fit with libraries is our shared values and pedagogy. In terms of values, we're talking concepts and actions such as inclusion, empowerment, access, and diversity that promote development and learning for all of our users. In terms of pedagogy, we're fostering welcoming and learner-centered experiences that focus on hands-on learning. Next slide. Let's dive into what these workshops look like within the science and engineering libraries at UW-Madison. Our focus is on providing entry-level lessons. We're introducing open source programming languages and software to work with them. And we also want to introduce the idea that resources are available for continued learning and support. Anything from documentation and lessons to informal meetups as places to share ideas and ask questions, to global communities like the Carpentries that also can be implemented at a local scale, which I'll talk about more in a few slides. We expect learners to come in with a wide range of experience, including people who are using programming languages for the first time. We offer 2 workshops per semester, each focusing on one programming language. One series provides an introduction to Python programming using Jupyter Lab software, and the other provides an introduction to R utilizing RStudio. Over the course of the workshops, we start from the basics, for example, just even beginning with basic terminology, then move on to things like functions, data manipulation, and data visualization. Importantly, in regard to research data management workloads that I mentioned earlier, we emphasize the importance of documenting decisions made regarding data analysis and demonstrate techniques for doing so alongside your code. We also offer a workshop dedicated to automating reports. And our series are flexible. Topics of interest or requested skills can be added if desired. Next slide. Our workshop content is adapted from the Carpentries lessons, and our Python workshop content is adapted from Automating the Boring Stuff with Python by Alice Weigart. Python lessons are also available through the Carpentries. Prior to the start of a semester series, workshop coordinators organize a meeting with instructors and helpers to discuss expectations for the learning environment, as well as instructor and helper participation, to clarify how communication will happen, and to ensure volunteers are aware of and can access instructional materials, to provide a forum for questions and suggestions. As I mentioned, we run 2 series in parallel, one Python and one R, in each of the fall and spring semesters. Each series consists of 5 to 6 workshops. Workshops are 2 hours long and held over Zoom. And I'll note that we always duplicate the initial basics workshop to offer learners the opportunity to access that foundational content. So the first workshop covers the basics content, then that's repeated for the second workshop. And it's not uncommon for learners who are just starting out in programming to attend both of those presentations to try to master that content. 1 instructor and 3 to 4 helpers are assigned to each workshop. This was mentioned earlier, but these are code-along workshops. So the instructor demonstrates coding within the programming software environment on screen, and learners follow along. We share a companion document with learners that includes notes and the code that we'll demonstrate during the workshop, plus additional exercises for practice following the workshop, or as an activity for learners who may be familiar enough with the content to work ahead. During instruction, helpers monitor chat for questions or issues. For example, error messages learners might encounter, and can respond within chat, or for more complex problems, can join a learner in a breakout room for discussion and troubleshooting. We do not record our workshops in an effort to protect privacy and to foster a comfortable learning environment. Next slide. Within the libraries, we usually average around 30 learners for each workshop in each series. And we see that our learners represent diverse roles, departments, and disciplines across campus, from undergraduates through full professors, from individuals who are just wanting to try to understand programming better to help them in their classes, to labs and campus offices wanting to facilitate change or improve their data workflows. Next slide. I want to just take a moment to acknowledge that the thought of working with data and code can be intimidating, and that might potentially make the idea of hosting workshops to teach these skills feel overwhelming. And that's really where the community aspects of the Carpentries is critical. At UW-Madison, we have a local community that, through campus, has membership to the global Carpentries community. There are many advantages to Carpentries membership. Sarah mentioned some of those. If you're at a campus that can obtain one, you can participate as a learner to develop your own programming skills. You have access to the instructor training program, so you can position yourself for others to teach Carpentries lessons, or you can hire trained instructors from the global community to teach lessons for your campus. If you aren't or can't become a member of the global community, explore what exists locally. Consider building your own. Maybe you can partner with an organization or institution that has a membership. You may be able to connect with people on campus who have computational skills and an interest in teaching them, some of whom may have even participated in Carpentries lessons themselves in the past. And once you've started, know that your community can grow. I mentioned UW-Madison's local community. Many of our volunteers in all of the roles, helpers and instructors, are actually past learners. So it's true that data encoding can be intimidating, but with the Carpentries, you don't have to do it alone. Plus, teaching is learning. The Carpentries, and in my experience, libraries, are engaged and engaging communities of practice. Next slide. So in case we haven't yet convinced you of the benefits, I just want to highlight some of what users can gain by engaging with the Carpentries. You can learn from and exchange tips and tricks with other learners and instructors. You can build your own local community to be able to offer valuable and in-demand training to your users. You can build familiarity, comfort, and confidence in your own computational skills by actively participating in each of the roles, learner, helper, and instructor. Upskilling always looks good on a CV, and involvement offers opportunities for you to share what you've learned with others. Next slide. There are a number of ways you can get involved with the Carpentries and in teaching computer programming skills to your users. I spoke earlier about the global Carpentries community and how you might establish local communities. We've listed some consortia here that you can investigate, and we encourage you to explore partnership possibilities beyond your campus if you don't have something in place already. Be creative about who in your community might be interested in learning and teaching these skills. We've both participated in and heard about partnerships with governmental organizations like the USDA. Consider working with other campuses or with nonprofits. Reuse the materials to learn programming yourself or to teach it to others. Join a Carpentries community, local or global, to improve your own skills and to access instructors and helpers for your library's workshops. Or become a Carpentries member to participate in instructor training or collaborative lesson development training. Next slide. With that, my co-presenters and I would like to thank the symposium organizers for inviting us to present today, and thank you to all who attended our talk. The lessons and workshops we introduced today are made possible by the Carpentries and their open materials, and with collaboration between the UW Libraries, the UW Data Science Hub, and a cohort of wonderful volunteers from across campus. Please reach out to Heather, Sarah, or me if you want more information or examples, and we'd be happy to take any questions you have.
Thank you. Okay, so I believe we have some questions in the chat coming in. I also am going to ask a question, but we have questions. So to Sarah from Jeff, Jeff Gallant, I'm staring at this and scouring the website, and I love the curriculum's outlook. Would you say this would help an OER program through training its staff on coding, or is this leading to a method that's maybe a way forward in sharing open resources?
I think both actually are possibilities. You know, I think you could train your staff with coding using the lessons themselves. And if that's what I think that's what you're asking about for that program. Let me know if I misunderstood the question. And then the other side, like a method for sharing open source resources, it absolutely is for a new way to like share open lessons. So I actually teach the collaborative lesson development training that I mentioned before, and I helped create that one. And we use that to help, like during the training, people start making these lessons themselves using the infrastructure. And so you can create a new lesson using the infrastructure. Anyone can use it and create these lessons and share them. I love sharing mine in the Carpentries incubator so that other people can see them and use them more easily, but you could create your own and host them at your own organization on GitHub if you'd like to as well. Let me know, Jeff, if I answered that or if you have follow-up questions. I'm not certain I fully interpreted it correctly.
Can I add to that as well? Can you hear me now? Sorry, I couldn't find the unmute while sharing. It's a little bit different. So I think another point, like when Sarah and I, at least when we were putting this presentation together, that Sarah made this great point that often in like a learning management system or maybe like a LibGuide system, if you're collaborating with someone, it's really hard to know what changes they've made. And there's no sort of like connection when you make a change with something. And sometimes you're like, did you change it? Like, I'm in the Canvas page, let me save it. And now you can get in the Canvas page and change it, right? But if you're using GitHub, which there is a learning curve to it. So there is some time, it's much harder to learn GitHub than Canvas. But you can do it, right? And there's support for learning it. So, but once you make that investment, you can track your changes and you submit your changes for everyone to look at. So it's a much more collaborative process for creating these tools. And if you're librarians, we often work together in creating like a module or some kind of learning output, right? So if we can take that time and invest in learning that tool, this could be a really powerful way to make open lessons for in the libraries. I think even a much more open way than like LibGuides.
Well, I'll say I'm going to be checking this out, and it sounds like my colleague Hallie is going to be checking it out as well. Sarah, thank you for answering the question in the chat. So the answer was institutions can become members through an agreement and fee with the Carpentries. Thank you. Okay, we do need to move on to our next presentation.